Cool. How's everyone doing?
Right. How are you?
Very, very well. Great job, guys. I know it's always hard to go last, but you did a great job.
Thanks, mate.
Great. Hey, I'm sure we'll be getting a few people joining our rooms. So as we do that, we'll just do a quick introduction, and then we'll kick off. So welcome everyone. I'm Abs Bulbuli. I'm the program director. I'll be your host for today. So this is a Q&A section for Demo Day, and this is your opportunity to ask SportsCube any question you may have. So in order to do the Q&A, if you have questions, type and submit them in the box below the video player. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Unfortunately, some of you may be experiencing some technical difficulties submitting questions, but don't let that stop you. Email our startups any questions and engage that way. So before we get to the questions, let me set the scene. So we've got these two strapping young guys, and the innovative sponsorship marketplace are literally revolutionizing the sports sponsorship ecosystem. Well, that was a bit of a mouthful. After only launching 2 months ago, they've already secured thousands of dollars worth of sponsorship for sporting clubs across Australia, and are helping brands be adored in these local communities. I'm incredibly pumped to be your host for this evening and relaying the questions that you ask in the questions box on the website. Without further ado, we're going to jump straight into things. I'm going to hand over to Tim and Jackson.
G'day, Abs. It is great to be here, mate, and we're stoked that you're our host, so good on you. We will make sure we maintain a heap of energy in here for all you cats. We really appreciate you starting with SportsCube's Q&A as well. Timo, do you want to kick us off, mate, with a little recap for the listeners about SportsCube?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining in, guys. So SportsCube helps brands sponsor sporting clubs. We are a marketplace that is revolutionizing sports sponsorship. Awesome. Do you want to start off with any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start off with a few questions. Again, if you've got any questions for SportsCube, submit them in the box below. We are having some technical difficulties, so if you can't, then please email your questions and we'll be happy to do that as well. So the last 6 months, we've seen a lot of change. How we live, how we work, how we socialize. How do you think sponsorship has changed during the COVID?
I think I'll start, and Timo, you might want to add. I think the first thing is how much more accountable brands are making rights holders, and in our case, clubs for that matter. So the way they measure things is certainly a little bit more strict. Every dollar going out the door has to bring a dollar back. And it's more strict on the accountability side of things at the moment. So because some marketing dollars and savings reserves has been sort of slashed, sponsorship now, and particularly into the future, is going to be monitored even a little bit heavier than what it used to be. Do you have anything to add on that, Tim?
No, absolutely nailed it, mate.
Awesome. So we've seen some sponsorship marketplaces like this before. What makes you guys different?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Jacko. There are several marketplaces across different countries across the world, and this isn't a new sort of new phase that we're going through. There's actually over the last decade been marketplaces that have come about. Some are still alive, but many of them just have not found that right fit. They have not found how to properly service sporting clubs and sponsors, and their tech. You know, it's not like our marketplace is not like a typical sort of eBay where you're buying hand cream and then that just has to be an instant transaction. Sponsorship is an ongoing process, and we're one of the only startups, one of the only marketplaces out there that facilitates that whole negotiation phase. So it is also really good just to see the industry just overwhelmed with all these new startups coming through with sponsorship too.
I will jump in there and say the other thing, Abs, is what's been great for us is that they've validated a lot of these ones that have sort of started in 2014, 2015. They've validated a lot of the issues, and we've been able to learn a lot without making so many mistakes ourselves, by being able to learn from other people's mistakes. And some of these guys have raised investment. They've validated the grassroots sporting industry in different continents and countries. But I suppose the other difference that I think is very, very much so worth mentioning, and something we want to emphasize, is that our strength in comparison to these guys is actually working with corporate businesses and that allowing them to sponsor grassroots sport at scale, and providing enormous outcomes and enormous reach by doing it that way, which usually is the most resource heavy way to sponsor.
Awesome. So like any great startup, you're looking for customers. Do you want to talk a bit about who your ideal next customer is, what they look like, what problem you're solving for them, how your solution fits into their systems?
I think the best way to do that is probably to talk about one that we've already done, which makes a lot of sense to the people that we're looking for in the near future. And one specifically, CBRE, Australia's largest commercial services real estate company, has started using SportsCube to sponsor around a lot of their shopping centres. So the problem they had was they always wanted to try and connect with their communities and around their shopping centres. They actually wanted to build relationships with organisations around their centres to gain more of a presence in those regional communities. And we're sort of struggling to drive local foot traffic into those stores with the traditional, Facebook and Google ads. It just wasn't emotionally connecting. And usually it doesn't, particularly in regional areas. So the state they were in was they really wanted to leverage their marketing dollars into something a little bit different, and to also build a legacy on top of their marketing, which is something that you can't really wrap meaning around a Facebook ad. So basically the tech and our product allowed us to connect them with sporting clubs in those particular geographies in close proximity to those stores. And we were able to create a lot of value for them at the moment. And the other thing worth mentioning is that they'll be able to manage and monitor those sponsorships for a 12-month period, which all those sponsorships are about a year tenure period. They'll be able to communicate, push campaigns to those clubs, make those clubs leverage their social media content, and all that for all through the one place on the SportsCube platform. So the future state for them is looking it's looking quite bright in that, not only are they growing their brand, but in this way of marketing, they're able to create a phenomenal legacy, which we're actually starting to see already.
Awesome. What does a future customer look like? Good
question. I think just literally what we've gone through with CBRE, I think we're finding there's a really good opportunity here with brands that manage national sort of accounts. They have many stores. They could be a franchise that has many franchisees that they're trying to push out national marketing strategies with. And trying to do that at scale is very, very tough, time consuming, resource heavy. So I think where we come in is trying to work with brands like a CBRE that could manage the account. I guess the ideal customer would be like a Grilled Burgers, Subway, one of those, a Telstra, Bupa, national accounts, multiple franchisees and outlets.
So if you are from one of those franchisees, those companies, then reach out to SportsCube. They'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's move on to the customer value part, like with these new customers that you're looking for. So how else could this be leveraged and used by a corporate, by a company?
Great question there. This has a lot of potential to be tailored heavily towards different brands and what their brands need. So it depends highly on their objectives. So if they want to say use SportsCube to, as I mentioned, try and get a national sort of approach, national strategy, that could actually highlight the key areas which they're looking for, put in their budgets and do that at scale. The other option as well is if they have a very like niche or targeted market, they might just have the one outlet that is a big focus. It could be a region. Is they're able just to have a lot of preferences built up for them. And it could be like with their budgets, it could be with their demographic as well. And this gives them a refined view of what sporting clubs are around them that really meet those key criteria. And yeah, that's sort of like where we can tailor it a few ways.
I'll jump in as well there, Timo. I think on top of all that, Abs, is that a few of the organisations we've got in our pipeline are actually using it to do more with their fundraising dollars. most corporates have a CSR, or corporate social responsibility, if you like, budget or community budget. And a lot that we've talked to, they simply donate a lot of that money. Whereas we come in and we're able to say, you might as well get something back from it. Usually two things. You want to be able to create some type of return or some type of strategy instead of donating to all sorts of things. Charities, sports clubs is obviously our expertise. And to be able to leverage the money instead of sort of just dumping it, not even monitoring it, not even measuring it. It's something that the money has to go. There's obligation with a lot of constitutions of all sorts of brands. The first thing that comes to my mind is pokey money, gambling money, different organizations that have obligations to have a percentage of their revenue go back to the community. These sort of guys are finding this a really interesting way to use sponsorship now that it's a lot easier through us rather than donations, to one, actually get some return on that money, and to two, we want sporting clubs in particular to learn how to be sustainable at the same time. And something like donations has had sort of a negative effect and the opposite effect of expecting grant money, expecting donation money. Usually it doesn't sit in a very good position long term. So for sustainability purposes as well, we think it's good for both sides.
So on that part, so why do you think it's been so hard for brands to get involved in this grassroots sports?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Jacko. So yeah, there's a few reasons, Abs. The main one being resources within that actual team of marketers. So there are brands that do have a whole sponsorship dedicated team, and this could be several individuals that actually have to go out there, do the manual prospecting, do all the negotiations, communicate all the stuff that our platform facilitates, which is taken up by many, many hours for each one of these employees. So that's sort of one aspect of it. Did you want to add, Jacko?
Yeah, I know you've hit it on the head, mate. I think the thing is, Abs, they can do this with their internal resources. Some of these corporates, they have large teams, but what we've found is that they would much rather spend their time leveraging partnerships they've actually got, working really hard to create and co-create activation opportunities to maximize the opportunity of the partnerships they have, rather than prospecting new events and clubs that are perfect partnerships for them. And, we had some validation at the start of this year, basically, that said that, brand managers, sponsorship managers, at times they can spend up to half their week trying to prospect the perfect opportunity. The tech is what's allowing us to do this at lightning speed and allowing them to give them back their hours to actually continue to leverage and maximize the partnerships they already have. So they absolutely do this, but like Timo said, it's just the labor intensive stuff. And the bigger they are and the more they want to sponsor and leverage and engage with their community, the longer and harder it is.
So your technology is going to make this much easier for them to kind of engage at this grassroots level. The other thing that we always find is the scalability, right? How do you do this at scale? And I think we find this with corporate brands as well, to sponsor at scale. Do you want to talk a bit about how you help people do that?
Yeah, definitely. So just as we touched on before, with trying to scale, literally having one person manage all these accounts, I mean, that's already time consuming and very expensive for you could imagine the wages with some marketers and sponsorship people. To do that on top of the actual sponsorship budget is enough for one person in a couple of clubs. So where we come in is our tech does all that legwork really of the sourcing, negotiations, the communications. It's all managing spreadsheets, documents, putting it all in that one place as well. So at scale, what this looks like is if there's a brand wanting to do a national strategy, it's putting in multiple locations or regions where they're wanting to go, pumping in, the certain criteria that they have for their clubs. And then they're able just to do that very easily.
So like any marketplace, on one side, you've got the corporates, the other side, you need something else as well. And this is where you've got the professional sports teams signed up. So do you talk about what sort of opportunities there are for this professional sports teams?
It's an interesting one. What happened was we built it for grassroots sport, and as we signed up, we started to get actually, as usually happens with startups, something comes along and market pulls product out of the startup, and that sort of happened with us already. We found a nice little sweet spot there and realised that particularly enhanced by COVID, that professional sporting teams were experiencing the same thing. In particularly needing revenue, needing more sponsors, because sponsors were in limbo with contracts. Some came out of those, and everybody was struggling for dollars, particularly in the sports industry. So for these guys, it's the same thing. Usually professional teams have a bit bigger of a brand network already, so they actually have connections, and oftentimes they're able to pick up the phone and they're connected. But for us, it's more so the unique corporate that actually has never been in the sponsorship game. It's the SME who's saved and actually flourished during COVID, who's always wanted to get involved with a sport or their favorite team, but really didn't know where to start and hasn't known where to start. And we've got a number of those organizations that basically also don't have the time. So they're saying, here's SportsCube. This is what I want. I want to go and I want to sponsor a professional AFL club or a professional netball club, or vice versa. So with both those, prospecting for both sides, rights holders at that top level are still looking for sponsors, and corporate sponsors are still looking for opportunities that are potentially exclusive, that aren't known outside of the sponsorship network. They're not clear and they're certainly not transparent. So we've been helping them with that as well.
Yeah, good point, Jacko. And I think, just add on here as well, with everything going on now with coronavirus and, the restrictions that are in place, the normal beers and coffee meetups that happen, even at that top level, just aren't possible. So they need a new method of how to, find new prospects. So there's been this sort of real push for all organizations to really try and adopt new technologies, because they really don't have any alternatives.
I think that brings us really neatly onto the tech part. So do you want to talk about how your tech does that? How does it connect the marketplace on one side with the corporates, on the other side with the actual sports organizations?
Let you take care of this, Tim, I reckon.
Yeah, too easy. So basically, sporting club signs up, they create listings. So it could just be any of their packages that they already have, or through our asset manager. So, they can identify what signage they have, what positions on the jerseys, anything else like social media. They can then create packages that they list on their on SportsCube. And then based on, the locations that they also put in there, brands that are looking, the main aspect to criterion searching is the location. So that drives the results. So a brand will come in, search via location, price, demographic, listing shows up, and the rest happens through that engagement. So the rest pretty much involves negotiating potentially on price or any of those other aspects, and then being able just to facilitate, the proposal, the transactions, and then everything that comes after that. So that just is all integrated within that one platform.
I think to add on that as well, I think a lot of these ones, some of the brands are coming to us as very, very unique objectives, and sponsorship is that uncanny beast. Some are looking for foot traffic into their local stores, so it's a proximity play. Some are looking purely for a reputation gain, and wanting to be encompassed within that community and to increase their PR and have more of a positive media presence everywhere. So it's a low socioeconomic club play. There's all sorts of different reasons why brands are coming to us, and we're able to facilitate a lot of that, Tim and I, manually. If it's something that the marketplace isn't necessarily connecting via proximity, it's something different. We're able to do a lot of that really quickly with our strong networks and deep industry experience, talking to grassroots clubs. We're able to do a lot of that and actually tailor what we're doing and our services towards any type of objective, really.
So I think that kind of fits quite neatly into the next question I had, was around some of these deals take a long time. They might be quite bespoke. There's like long lead times, large sums of money involved. So how does your marketplace stack up for the whole process? Is it around speed? Is it around the standardization of these deals? Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Such a good point, Timmy. You probably definitely want to add on this. Negotiation abs is what we've found after a lot of validation over the last few years takes the longest. Without a doubt, I haven't seen a deal, particularly at our level, go through without somebody wanting something different. one of the parties wanting, to change the tenure, change the price, change the assets. It's an incredibly long time. And we've done ourselves. We've seen our parents sit through 15 deliberation meetings with the local bakery and with a corporate that wanted to engage. But everybody wants something different. And simply manually, it's something that just takes an awfully long time. And it can take up to months to just, secure the partnership and get it across the line. So that's certainly where the marketplace is paying dividends for brands like that.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, it's accountability. So one of the major things is just waiting game of hearing back from somebody on the other side. With our software as well, we enable those notifications as prompting. It's like, hey, you need to send a message back. You need to hand over your review on the proposal. All of this stuff just tries to at least prompt them to move a bit quicker as well, and not just get lost in the flurry of emails that people get usually.
So that's where we see some of the deals fall through, right? Where there's the communication breaks down. So you're there to nurture that deal all the way through. That might be a good way to ask the next question is around, some people might be thinking this is what marketing agencies will do. This is their remit. This is their space. So how are you different? What separates you from a marketing agency?
Great question. Who was that? Was that a marketing agency that asked that question? That's
probably.
Is there a marketing agency on the other side?
I can review my sources, yeah.
It's a great question. Listen, my direct response to that is simply, we're a marketplace that's using advanced technology and matching capability, so we don't charge upfront fees. That's probably the biggest difference. Marketing agencies as such, sponsorship agencies usually have sort of high overheads, and they have people that are going to go prospect this manually. Simply now and in the future, we'll be able to obviously not charge upfront fees. And the second one, more specifically, is there's a limit to the work that a marketing agency could have because of their manual processes. And the labor that they've got to do, depending on how many employees they have. Agencies usually, when they're doing this manually, abs, and they're prospecting manually, they can only run so many accounts. So our other advantage there, I suppose, and how we're different is we're able to do this at scale. We're able to connect people, and we're not really doing much when it comes to it. And we're able to do that with speed, and that's something that certainly we think sort of is our advantage to those guys.
So that brings us quite neatly onto the business model part. Being a marketplace, there has to be some financial transactions in here as well. So what do clubs think about the 15% commission model? How is that being received?
Yeah, we highly spent just highly engaged hours and hours with each volunteer that we've interviewed, each customer that we've had over the years that we've been afloat, and we found that there is usually quite a big gap and a margin there for the actual volunteers of that club to get a little bit of an incentive to help sell that sponsorship, and that can be anywhere from 5 to 25%, and that 15% kind of fits nicely in between that. The other side of it is they don't have to go out and do that manual work. We're bringing this to them, and they're more than happy for us to help us help them pretty much with this 15%. So obviously we'd want to come down as much as possible as well in the future. And I think by growing and brands coming on board, there's an opportunity as well. But at the moment, the clubs are more than happy for that 15% commission.
I think it's really interesting as well. Timo just touched on it then. The unit economics of any marketplace abs, usually you're able to come down the more you move and the more you scale, and the bigger the network gets. Something that we're looking at. But right now, we ran an experiment a couple of years ago where we sat down. It took us 6 months, but we literally met with 100 clubs. And the feedback we had, which I think is important to emphasize, is that basically they said, well, if it's something we wouldn't have, you can take whatever you want. And it's funny, we obviously wanted to find a nice medium for us where it was that nice little piece of restriction. It was enough for them to be able to get their own margin, execute whatever the assets that the brand needed, but also be a lot cheaper than what a marketing agency does. And we found that price as well purely by talking to clubs that had used marketing agencies, semi-professional clubs that basically we're getting that big sort of chunk snippet, and we got really good response with 15%, but it's something that will probably definitely change as we grow.
Just on that 50%, is that a yearly fee or is that monthly? How does that actually work?
Per transaction. So per successful sponsorship, which basically at the moment we only win when the sporting club wins. So it's something we pride ourselves on. It's something we're really proud of at the moment. And like we said, things will change, and the way we make money will probably change going into the future. Hopefully the unit economics change, but right now we're pretty different in the eyes of them already, which is what's really important, that we're not winning until they win. So it's certainly a motivator to get as many club sponsorship ads.
Also, and then talk about how else you make money. Is that something in the roadmap, or is that something you're already exploring, other revenue streams?
Yeah, so one of our other revenue stream is the service fee on the brand side as well. So for brands that are using us to help prospect and create really bespoke accounts, so they might want to service some areas that we don't currently have any listings, we don't currently have any sporting clubs signed up, or actually we put a 10% service fee on top of that to help manage, that whole procurement process of getting them involved. And then further on down the roadmap, we believe there's a great opportunity for us to have a software fee. So by managing this everything right now, it's completely free, and we think that once we learn more about what customers really want, we can add features, and then through that, definitely think there's an opportunity to start charging there as well.
Cool. I always like to see what the market potential is of any idea of any company. Do you want to talk a bit about how much money brands spend on sponsorship globally and how that breaks down in Australia as well?
Do you want to have a crack at this, Timo, and I'll add?
Yeah. I mean, the latest figures were 90 billion annually with global spend in sponsorship. That is pretty much going to change given the whole crisis right now. Brands are starting to rip their partnerships out, unfortunately. So, but what we are finding is that there is a lot more, more grassroots stuff which is happening as well. So the latest figures for Australia, do you want to touch on those, Jacko? I literally just had them in my head and it just disappeared.
Well, like the sports sponsorship addressable market is enormous, Abs. You think about all the sponsorship that goes on, and now that we're not just in the grassroots space, our market we're able to address some of this with some of the work we've done with professional teams. So it's huge. But for us, we're sort of like focusing more so on corporates to grassroots, which we said was our strength. And the money that they actually have there, it's always allocated per financial year or every quarter, whatever it might be. But it actually ends up going into a TV budget, because being able to access that and perform that and execute all of it ends up becoming too hard when it comes crunch time. So look, $90 billion is a sponsorship industry before COVID hit. It's going to fluctuate for the next sort of 12 to 18 months. But coming out of that, there's really strong indicators that say it's going to be bigger than what it was, which is incredibly promising for us. I think for the last 10 years, it's grown 4 to 5% year on year, which is quite a ridiculous amount of money. And there's a fair chunk of that goes towards grassroots.
Cool. Awesome. We've got a question from our audience, Pat Barrett. Thank you for your question. So it says, hey, Jackson, Tim, SportsCube, super impressive. I agree. The question is, if a major brand comes to you with a budget and key brand objectives, can you tailor a proposal for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So when a brand comes with us with a budget, we really want to learn what their objectives are, who they're looking to target, and what locations. So based on that, we're able just to really just tailor what we can offer, give them, certain types of sport that might better meet their brand or their objectives. Like it could be separate teams meeting their demographics. So absolutely, that's what we've done in the past, and that's how we're going to move forward, is really just one-on-one with these brands.
I'll touch on that as well. I think great question, Pat, and absolutely we've done that with every customer we've had, and other fair bit in the pipeline that are doing just that. And it's something we touched on a little bit before, Abs, is that sometimes the brand has very, very unique objectives. If it's, people sponsor right now to increase employee satisfaction in their organization. And when it's like that, the metrics and how we measure that is very, very different than whether it's a brand awareness play or it's a proximity to store play. But absolutely, it's such a good question, because brands want somebody to take care of that. People are very busy. We're able to work on this full time, around the clock, where a brand's saying, this is what I want to do. These are my objectives. This is what I think should happen. Way you go. It's something that we pride ourselves on, and we make really easy for any brand that does that. And prospecting for our marketplace as well is that simple. Sign up, tell us what your goals are, tell us if you have a sports specificity that you want to, just sponsor netball, just sponsor AFL, or it's completely generic, and whether there's locations involved, and basically we get to work, and it's that easy.
Awesome. Okay, there's a follow-up question from Pat as well. Thanks, Pat. Is there a way these corporate brands can stay anonymous on your platform?
Yeah, 100%. Some want to stay more anonymous than others. So yeah, it's a big factor. I mean, the last thing that we want to do is make, the marketing manager or the CEO of one of these brands get bombarded by somebody 12 times a day asking for sponsorship. So absolutely, confidentiality is a big play of ours. So, but on the other hand, we definitely do our due diligence with each brand. We don't want, for example, tobacco companies. We're not working with anyone like that. So, yeah, that's pretty much us.
It's what is that? ecal.com. They got their head screwed on there at ecal. It's such a
100%.
good point, because we actually got this feedback straight after we launched ABS, where businesses were like, we really want to get involved, but we have an issue with 1,000 clubs on the marketplace contacting us at the one time saying, come on, Greg, we need sponsorship. And then Greg being annoyed by Susie on the other side 10 times a week for 52 weeks, pushing to try and get something through the door. And it's something we went straight away that we launched, and we went, well, there has to be that understanding on the corporate brand side. And it just makes sense for corporates that are coming and want to do that. So we have a few options as well there, Pat. We have, you can actually make not just your profile private, but even on the other side, rights holders, professional sporting teams want to make their listings private, what they're charging for their listings private. The fact that they're on there looking for sponsorship can sometimes be commercially sensitive information. So we have multiple different elements where we can sort of make sure that it fits virtually anything that the brand wants to do on the confidentiality side of things.
Awesome. And then we've got one final one from Pat as well. But before we do that, we've got just less than 10 minutes left. So if anyone else wants to ask a question as well, please submit those in the question box underneath the live video player. So last one, do you have a mix of physical and digital sponsorship assets?
You might want to add on this, Timo. You've been dealing with an enormity of ones as of late. But yeah, we absolutely do. And I think it's something that is actually a strength of grassroots sporting clubs, ABS. You've got anything from the sign of the fence to the naming rights partner of the new clubhouse, the naming rights partner of the team, player kits, jersey spots, sock spots, and apparel, all these sorts of things, to social media and clubs with enormous databases that are untouched because they're grassroots clubs, but they've got 3,000 people on a database. They've got 400 members. And all these guys don't actually, have a preferred brand of people in that particular industry. So opportunity everywhere, but certainly everything from social, digital, physical assets. Not only are we seeing on the marketplace being listed, but that has already been sold.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, Jacko, it's helping these clubs identify what they might know they have available. So it could be that, it could be the access to their database. It could be different social media channels or, their email calendars. So yeah, absolutely. Just a whole range of different offers.
Awesome. Pat, definitely get in touch with the boys after this. It seems like there's a lot more to discuss. So let's just move on to what the future looks like. What's your roadmap as you go forward? So what other markets do you think this applies to? Is this still in Australia? Is it outside of Australia? Any different verticals are you looking at?
It's a good question. I think verticals and markets both, yes. The US collegiate system, ABS, is just touching the sponsorship, sort of the tip of the iceberg regarding sponsorship being streamlined. tech actually playing a part. And it's something that we've done some validation around and some R&D around already. It is enormous over there. Europe's pretty similar. The UK, very similar landscape, almost to Australia's semi-professional sporting scene. So we've done an incredible amount of research to work out that there's definitely a play for virtually every market will be a little bit different, but virtually every continent. And clubs are struggling everywhere, so that's pretty straightforward. But if brands are using the same format and same system and they want ease, it's just going to be something that we can be able to move and tweak and twist moving into different dynamics. But regarding verticals, we've had everything from athletes to other things other than sport, so corporate sponsorship, everything hit up about whether the marketplace can actually hold that as well. And it's something that we're really stubborn on, I suppose, that we want to get this right between clubs and brands first, because we think it's a very, very straightforward play to get athletes involved if athletes are the product of clubs. So clubs can basically get athletes on a lot quicker than what it would be if we started with athletes. And it was something that we probably talked about 5 to 10 times, 6 to 12 months ago, Abs, where we sat down and went, should we start with athletes first? They need sponsorship just as much as clubs. Brands want to do that, and it's so hard to do that. But what we've realized is if we can nail it with clubs, it's a very, very straightforward, seamless process for them to get athletes involved. And it's a vertical that we think it's a non-negotiable. It makes a lot of sense to move into.
Awesome. And what's next for SportsCube?
What's next? Yeah, I mean, the next few months, we have a couple of accounts, global ASX listed companies in the pipeline, which we're looking to close. So really trying to just finalize some of these proposals and get them over the line. The other thing as well is we are raising soon. So Q4, early 2021, we will be opening that round as well. So it's a crazy couple of months. It's already been a crazy year. So yeah, future ahead is pretty exciting for us as well.
I think the next steps as well, Abs, just before you jump into the next one, is like we're not only looking to do that, we're looking to actually gain our first few key strategic partners. It's one of the big reasons we jumped into SBC. They pride themselves on their their sort of mentor and partner network, and it's been instrumental for us. So we're looking to work with government sport bodies who we know share the passion and the same issues for the industry that we're in as we do. And virtually anybody that's is passionate about grassroots sport and helping them get back on their feet after this period, as we are. But also the people on the other side, brands who legitimately exist for community, and they have a massive chunk of their organization that's focused on making the world a bit better of a place, and we're going to help them do that regarding sponsorship. So next steps for us is closing the pipeline, finding those strategic partners, and like Timo said, we'll open a round in Q4 of 2020, which is really exciting. It'll be SportsCube's first funding. It'll be SportsCube's first raise. We've bootstrapped pretty much all the way up until this period.
Awesome. And everyone loves this question whenever we get it. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, apart from SportsCube dominating the sponsorship world, I mean, I think, going into those other countries, there's sport in all aspects of every country, really. Sport isn't just pivotal in Australia; it's pivotal, across Asia, US, Europe, our neighbours, New Zealand. It's really not too far ahead of us. But I mean, we want to be a team of a fair few of us as well, moving forward. So it's having our own headquarters. I mean, there's the list goes on, but just to name a few, that's where we want to sit.
I've got a few as well I'd love to emphasize. The first thing is we're going to stop eating 2-minute noodles, Abs. I reckon will be the first thing. That'll be unreal to get a steak into both of us. But honestly, I think the best way to answer that question, we get asked it a lot, is how we see the sponsorship industry and sport in general. Is it sort of helps us align to where we want to be. And the truth is we want to see grassroots sport thrive. We've got a real stubbornness about us that we're probably not going to stop until we're happy with where that sits. That's equally as dangerous. But for Timo and I, like, we just want to see these clubs not not struggle and actually find some financial sustainability, because we know that'll make the professional sporting scene, it'll be booming and get back on their feet likewise. But also it just contributes virtually to every community, sporting clubs in general, whether people connected to sport or not. It helps people thrive, and economically it's outstanding for each regional community. So we see that thriving in 5 years. And if that's thriving in 5 years, we've done our job.
Beautiful. And before we close, I want to give the floor back to you guys as to just a final close to for everyone who's watching. What do you want to say to them?
Do you want to say something, Timo, or what do you reckon, mate?
You go, mate. You open, you close.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think, look, the big thing for us is we actually implore everybody right now to get around their local sporting clubs, Abs. It is a tough time. We mentioned in our pitch, everybody's connected to one or two, some connected to a lot. And it really is going to make a difference, and it could be crucial, the timing of it. So we urge you to do it as soon as possible. And in whatever shape or form, people are helping in all sorts of different ways. And then on top of that, what we're doing and aligning to what we're doing is if your brand has any interest in this space, then we want to talk, whether it's through us or not. We want to help great brands do great things. We want to help brands be a part of this story, because there are going to be great stories that will be told for a very long time about this period, Abs, and simply you'd want to be a part of it if you control, or you're in a decision-making spot of any brand. We can help you tell that story with a lot more ease. So we implore people to do that and to make sure they're a part of that narrative, because we promise it'll pay dividends, and you want to be a part of this story when people start telling it.
Beautifully said. If you want to be part of this journey with SportsCube, reach out to them, post the demo day. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you, Tim, and thank you to everyone who watched this. I hope you all enjoyed demo day, and until we meet again, stay safe out there. Thanks, everyone.